Everybody, another day back on the Valiant build. This time I thought I'd show you a little bit about what goes into figuring out how to mount an alternator on an engine that came with no brackets, can't use any of the factory brackets in the car. Everything has to be made from scratch. So I'll take you over here. I got the motor behind me, and I'll show you what's going to happen. The motor is not going in with traditional motor mounts. It's going to use a front plate and a mid plate to mount the motor in the chassis. And so I've got to figure out how to mount my alternator when I'm using a front motor plate. So we'll take you over there and I'll show you what's going on. Okay, so we're over here at the motor, and as you can see, this is a motor plate. This is how the thing's going to get mounted in the chassis of the car. There's mounts that are welded into the chassis of the car that'll get bolted in here on each side. And you can see that I've also added a timing pointer because LS motors typically don't come with any kind of timing pointer on them. They're controlled by computer. And so they don't really need a timing pointer for OEM applications and stuff like that. But this being a motor where I'm not only doing the whole building of the car, but I'm also doing tuning from scratch in the Holley Dominator, it's always good to verify your timing marks on your damper and, you know, verify top dead center, number one, and all that stuff. So I put that on, and I'll bring you in a little bit and give you a closer picture of what that looks like. But it's basically just a straightforward sharpened pointer that points to the crank pulley or the damper. So here's the issue that I've got. This is a typical motor plate. This is how it fits on the motor, and I've got to figure out where I'm going to run an alternator. And looking in the chassis of the car, I think the best place is going to be kind of like right over here in this lower corner. So I'm going to get to work, and I'm going to kind of start laying stuff out, and then eventually we'll have to cut out one of these motor plates and make the alternator fit, and well, we'll just see how it goes. But that's part of what's involved. So here's my alternator. This is a PowerMaster alternator. It's I think 180 amps at 4,000 RPM. I've put a larger diameter pulley on it so I don't overspin it. This motor is going to redline at 7,000, and with the ratio that of the pulley that came on it, it would spin the alternator up over 21,000, and that's not recommended. So I put a larger pulley on it. This is also a variable voltage alternator. It has an adjustable setting on it so that I can set the voltage on this alternator where I want it, because the car is going to use a 7-cell battery instead of a traditional 6-cell battery. So where a 6-cell normal battery has a resting voltage of about 12.6 volts, my car will have a resting voltage of about 14.8 volts. So, and it's going to charge at about 15.5 or 16 volts. So the benefit of that is lower current and just, you know, better performance from the electrical system. I can use, in some cases, lighter gauge wire, although that's not really the reason I'm doing it. I'm really doing it to reduce the current draw of some of the high current stuff like the cooling fans, the electric water pump, the electric fuel pumps, that kind of stuff. When you run them at higher voltage, they'll draw less current. So anyway, this is the alternator that's got to go on, and I'm thinking it's going to go on somewhere in here like so, but I've got to figure out, you know, where, and I also obviously have to cut the motor plate out because you know, the motor plate's flush with the front of the block, so this is in the way. So that's got to get hollowed out and figure out where it's going to get cut. And so that's part of my next project. So I'll bring you back when I get a little further along. Okay, so as you can see, I've used CAD, Cardboard Aided Design, to kind of figure out where I need to cut my motor plate. And what I've done is I've just taken this piece of cardboard and kind of figured out where mounting bolt holes could be, how things could fit, and will the alternator fit. And I think I've got it figured out. I think it's going to go in here something along these lines. Looks like the belt's going to line up and everything should be good. So I'm going to transfer this shape to the aluminum motor plate and cut that out. And then I'm going to have to make some sort of a bracket for belt tensioning lockdown purposes, because this is where it's going to swivel. But I'm going to use this point here, I think, to go to this point of the alternator to lock it in place after I tighten the belt. So that's a bridge I'll cross when I get there. I'm going to cut this out first and go from there. So I'll bring you back once I get the motor plate cut out. Okay, so got the motor plate cut out, and I think the alternator is going to fit. We're going to hang it in there and give it a try and see what happens. I think it's going to go in something along this nature. And we'll just get that kind of hung in there. But now you can see I've got to make something to go from this point on the block to this bottom place on the alternator, so that when I put the belt on and I tighten it, well, that may be a trick too, is getting the, oh no, it'll go. I was going to say it might be a trick getting the belt on, because there's not a lot of room in here. So when I tighten that, I'm going to have something in here to hold it in place. So I've got to develop some sort of a bracket that'll go from the backside of here up here to the block. Then I'll make that on the mill out of a chunk of probably 1/4 inch aluminum, and should be pretty straightforward. Just curve it to make it fit and get the center to center distance correct. It should be pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to bother showing you that. I'll just show it to you when it's finished. That'd be pretty boring to watch. So I'll bring you back when I get that piece done. Okay, so I've got it hung, I've got the belt on it, and I made this little bracket back here. And I could probably unbolt it real quick and kind of show you what it looks like. And I'm thinking this is going to be sufficient to give me the tensioning that I need to keep that belt tight. Proof's in the pudding, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, get it out of there. This is what that little bracket looks like, and it's basically just a pivot point and then a groove, so that the bottom bolt has a place to slide and adjust. And so when it goes up in there, and this is designed so that this pad of the alternator is 1/4 inch forward of the front of the block, so everything goes in there straight when I get it in. And then I just put a bolt through it. I can find, there we go. Just put a bolt in there, and then what'll happen is another bolt and nut will go through here, through the slot in that bracket, and I'll tighten it up, and away we go. So that'll give me some adjustment, and as the belt stretches and moves out this way, this bracket will move along with it. And I gave myself lots of clearance here, so even if the belt stretches a good amount, I've still got plenty of room here to bring the alternator over and keep the belt tight. So I think that's going to work. So that's basically how I'm going to do this. I know there's a million other ways, and I know you can mount the alternator backwards, and you can spin the alternator backwards by facing it this direction and hang it out here, but I didn't really want a bunch of stuff hanging out here. I've got a water manifold that goes up here and hoses to the radiator, and there's a bunch of stuff kind of out in front here, so I didn't really want the alternator to be turned around backwards. So this is just one way of doing it. I did it on this side because the rack and pinion, the steering box, kind of goes, down in here, and it's kind of close in here, so I didn't want to take a chance on running into room over there on that side, so that's why it went where it did. Certainly not the only way to do it, just the way I'm going to do it, and hopefully it's going to work, and we'll see what happens. So I just wanted to kind of show you that, what's kind of involved in custom mounting an alternator for a drag and drive car. So thanks for watching, and when I've got something else interesting, we'll bring you back.